We are here for another episode of, I was going to say Clean Tech Talk. That's our podcast on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. This is EV Obsession, which is on YouTube and is starting to go out to podcast networks as well under the name EV Obsession. Joe Boris and I are co-hosting this show, talking about the latest EV news of the day, or the past few days in this case, since it's just been the weekend and we didn't do a show. And generally, we're trying to bring 10, 15, 25, 55. How old are you, Joe? No. How long have you been working in the auto space? No.
Yeah, I got my
Okay.
first automotive job in 1997, so
All right.
26 years.
So he's bringing 26 years of automotive experience. I'm bringing about a little more than 10 years of EV and
Sure.
Tesla experience to the table. And we dive into the news, but we are also bringing a lot of historical context and info. So the first story today, I have to share the screen to show you, is an interesting one about auto dealers beginning to sell their electric vehicles for under MSRP, lower than MSRP prices.
Yeah, this is interesting because we're starting to see a lot of this. I just got off the Auto Hub show that I do with Ian and Jeff Polo, and that's a whole different show that we're a part of. And we are talking about things from a dealership perspective, especially the electrification of auto vehicle lineups. And what we are starting to see is that EVs, after years of being order only kind of things that dealers would have pre-sold before they ever landed, with the exception of the Chevy Bolt and the Nissan Leaf, that they are now behaving a lot more like mainstream inventory. So what does that mean? What that means is that these cars, instead of coming onto the lot pre-sold, they are arriving on dealer lots having not been pre-sold. They're now competing with other vehicles that are on the lot and ready to go right there. And the belief among many dealers, especially in middle America and a lot of the rural markets, is that there is no demand for EVs. There's no market for EVs because these EVs that the dealers ordered a year ago or a year and a half ago, when they were able to mark them up significantly and then move them out of state or flip them to another reservation holder, are now sitting on the lots. And, quite frankly, I think that a lot of this comes down to ordering. A lot of these dealers stocked up heavily on $100,000 variants of the F-150 Lightning. They stocked up on top shelf versions of the Mustang Mach-E. The EQS is another example. There's a lot of these top shelf EQS models that are sitting on dealer lots, and they're there for, I would say it looks like 56 days versus 38 days of inventory for an internal combustion S class. The F-150s, they're looking now about like 70 to 80 days of inventory, which is a far, far cry from like 0 days of inventory or 10 days of inventory over a Tesla. But I think it goes back to legacy auto and dealership, especially, kind of cynicism about electric vehicles and not understanding what Tesla is offering. They look at this and they say, well, Tesla's electric. All we have to do is build something that's electric and it'll sell. That's not the case. You still have to deliver a compelling product. And just like we talked about last week, when we compared the BMW i7 and the Lucid Air to the Mercedes DQS, if you build a car that looks like a jelly bean, nobody is going to want it. And it doesn't matter that it has the three-pointed star on the hood. Nobody wants a jelly bean. A jelly bean is not aspirational. So these EVs are now starting to deal with market realities, and they're having to live and coexist in the real world market, which is exacerbated, and it's a hard market because of high interest rates and things like that. But none of this really surprises me, and I don't see any of this as a bad sign for EVs. It just kind of shows me the EVs are becoming more mainstream now that they're behaving like mainstream products. And to every dealer out there who sees this or listens to this and says, oh, this means there's no market for EVs or the EV market is folding, go look at Jeep, go look at Stellantis, go look at Ram. and realize that they've got 150 days. If you look at like a Jeep Compass, they have 520 days inventory in some markets. They stopped building that car and they still won't sell the last one for another 2 years. So, unless you're out there saying Jeep is dead and Jeep is dying and there's no more room for Stellantis, you really can't make that same argument with EVs. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox and let Zachary speak.
I've got a few comments and definitely one or two questions. So first of all, I mean, I love jelly beans. I mean, I prefer the vegan ones. I don't eat gelatin, so I go with the vegan jelly beans. I try to avoid them because they're not great for your teeth, and I have enough teeth problems at my age. But that's what we're talking about, right?
No,
What is a jelly bean in the car world?
it just looks like a jelly bean. The EQS has like no style.
Oh, I thought it was a general term. You just
No. It just looks
or
like a jelly
oh,
bean. A
okay.
jelly bean is not aspirational.
Okay. I was like, I know
Nobody
about
sits there
lemon
at
cars.
night.
I know about lemons, but
Yeah, no, it just
jelly
looks
bean.
like a jelly bean.
No,
Nobody is sitting up at night going
I don't know.
lusting for an EQS. Zero people.
I think it's very nice. It's just you're struggling in that market. You're dealing with more traditional buyers. You're dealing with people not necessarily interested in the latest tech. They just want the best traditional car. I don't know. I'm not sure. They're selling pretty well in Europe too. I don't know. I don't know. But I was gonna comment on the cars that seem to have the biggest average discounts. So that is the
Sure.
Audi e-tron GT, the Mercedes models, and the Volvo models, Joe. That's so they're all like pretty bad. The Volvo 12.7% on the XC40 Recharge, 9.6% average discount on C40 Recharge. Those are big. A lot of the other ones, 2.4, 1.6, like this.
Yeah.
This seems just like, well, my question, which was jump straight to it. I know you just talked a lot, but you lived in the auto dealership world for many years. Is that normal looking? Because like I have no clue. Is an average discount of a couple percent or a few percent sort of normal, or is that sort of below par? Is that kind of you're struggling a little bit? You
I
should
think it's still pretty much good. I think most people, when they go into a dealership, they're looking for about a 10%. They're trying to get 10% off, right? So
they're
if
getting
it's a
like 2%.
30,000, yeah, if it's like a $30,000 car, it might start at 25 and they'll close the deal at 27.5, 28. I think
Yeah.
that's realistic.
So I mean, so it
These all
seems
look
like,
very normal to me.
yeah, I mean, our perceptions of the auto market have been severely warped by COVID, and it's just taken a couple of years or a few years to kind of unwork the weirdness of COVID. So I'm just wondering, is this basically, there've been a lot of headlines, oh, EVs are sitting on lots, oh, this is not good, the EV market. Is it really like a problem, or is it more like just regression to the norm and just this is how cars are sold in the US. They sit on lots for a while. The prices get modified as dealers need. I mean, I think dealers also probably started finally getting them more as they were seeing these they could mark up the prices enormously and sell them. And they're like, oh, I'll order more EVs and I'll be we'll make
That's
this
right.
forecast. I'm going to make this much more profit. But really, it's like, once they get enough supply, they know, and everyone knows, then the prices can come down more and it can just be more of a natural market. And I think I mean, with EV market share around approaching 10% in the US, that seems like the time when that should be happening. At the same time, it's still about half Tesla, the market.
Hmm.
And that's not the
Well,
same in other markets like Europe, where Tesla's more like 20% or something. So it's still a case of it's not really at 10%, the EV market. It's like at 5% maybe, with Tesla at another 5% or whatever it
yeah.
is.
But I think that's fair. So I will say this. These are all very normal numbers. And if you look at these numbers in isolation, which is what a lot of people do, and this is not just a dig on people looking at numbers and statistics. Whenever anybody reads about anything, they tend to do so in isolation.
Yeah.
This is not a religious podcast, but when people read the Bible, they tend to think of the events of the Bible happening in isolation. They don't understand that like Hannibal is crossing the Alps and, you know, Xerxes' Persian troops are marching on Athens. All of these things are happening at the same time. And to truly understand one, you have to understand it in the context of the other. To truly understand the average days of inventory of EVs, to truly understand these kind of discounts on EVs, you have to look at the market as a whole. And that means you have to look at the market at the time these vehicles were ordered, which in many cases was 6, 8, 10 months ago. Interest rates were lower, EVs were hotter, and people had reservations. A lot of people, when inventories were really tight, had reservations on multiple vehicles that only bought or needed one vehicle. And the dealers were more than happy to take their reservations and order those vehicles. So you had somebody who had a reservation on a Lightning, they had a reservation maybe on a Model Y, they had a reservation on an EQ, and they kind of bought whichever one came in first. And then the rest of them are going to sit on the lot. And the fact that a lot of these vehicles are still transacting for within 5% of MSRP, 5 years ago, the dealers would have been pounding their chest about this. But when you are a dealer and you live on a 30-day cycle and your mindset is looking ahead to the end of the month and maybe no further, right? And you're a corporation and you look at things quarterly. So you're a Group 1 or you're an AutoNation and you're looking at quarter to quarter, you lose sight of the 4 or 5 or 10-year reality. And this is just reality. I mean, you're doing 1% discount on Hyundai. I mean, again, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if you had walked into a dealership on October 23rd, 2019, 4 years ago, pre-COVID, and said, you're going to sell every Hyundai that you get at 1.1% off of MSRP, they'd have high-fived you. They'd have been like, this is amazing. That's great news.
Yeah.
But
So you got 1.1%.
Tiny about it is nonsense.
1.1% on the Hyundai Ioniq 6. For a minute, I was reading that as your EV has the lowest of the markdowns, but yours is 1.6%. The Ioniq 5, it's still very good. I was just trying to identify which EVs are not on this list, because obviously there's some that are not selling above, below the average, the MSRP, and that includes the BMW iX, which is, I guess, doing all right.
But again, they're not getting discounted. It's funny, we look at this, and if you go back to the XC40 and the Volvo that's getting 12% off, I actually don't have an issue with that. It's an older vehicle. It's one of the oldest vehicles on any of these lists because it was first introduced in like 2016. So it's been on the market now for 6 full model years. And quite frankly, the hybrid version is really, really good. So it's kind of a tough sell.
Yeah, a very notable one not on the list is the Chevy Bolt. So that's notable, continues to be a leader of its own. I think in being clearly the most affordable, electric car in the US market is helping the Bolt quite a bit.
Where's the Leaf? I didn't see it on the list.
The Leaf is on there. It's not doing well.
Yeah, I just didn't see it. Well, but again, you're talking about a Chatamo.
Oh no, it's doing all right.
2.4%. Come on.
Sorry,
that should be 20% off.
But that's not bad either. The 4.3%.
No, but the Leaf should be 25% off fire sale.
Yeah, I don't know.
They should be struggling to sell every single one, and people are still lining up to buy them. That's baffling to me.
I'm shocked that well, how many people is it? Where's the Leaf on this list? Well, anyway,
that's versus Q23.
Yeah, whoops, I did this
versus
wrong.
21.
Yeah. I clicked the wrong chart, but anyway, there's basically just a handful. Yeah, the Leaf is down, so sales are dropping, but still people are buying it for average price of $33,000. That's bonkers.
That's insane.
But yeah, there's not many.
You shouldn't do that. If you're listening to this, you shouldn't have done that.
There are a few higher cost ones: Hummer EV, Cadillac Lyriq. I don't see them on here, but I don't know if they're really being.
Cadillac Lyriq is there.
Oh, it is there. Okay.
Oh, it's not on the discount list. No.
Yeah, no, on the discount list. Yeah, but basically almost every EV is, and I mean that's just, and I think a lot of people were waiting for a while to buy new cars, waiting for interest rates to drop, and I feel like people are sort of giving up on that a little bit, or they're just like their patience is wearing out. They're like, I just need a new car, or I just want a new car, and
well, it's interesting,
So I think that's helping the market.
Yeah. I
But
think also people are willing to suffer to drive a new car,
yeah,
especially Americans. Americans will cut back on vacations. They'll cut back on dining out. They'll cut back on their hobbies, on classes, on education to drive a newer, fancier, higher priced car. Very rarely do you meet someone who's still tooling around in a 15 or 16-year-old Honda Civic and using the money that they would have spent on a new car to go on vacations, have new experiences, to take a summer off kind of thing. So it's a different kind of culture. And I think the people who are not buying new cars are people who cannot buy new cars. As long as they can buy a new car, they will continue to do so, even if it's not the best financial decision for them.
and Steve was wise to bring in Tesla here. I think this is one of the things that I find complicated and a little irksome about discussions about Tesla's prices changing all the time is they're playing the role of dealer as well. So it's like dealers are always changing prices. In fact, throughout the day they're changing prices. So
Yeah,
naturally, Tesla, as the seller of its vehicles, is going to be modifying its prices frequently. But there's often a lot of controversy over it, a lot of, you know, a lot of discussion about it. And part of it, of course, is it's on the national level. Part of it is that it's Tesla. But
right.
I mean, you can't expect Tesla to have a flat price and never change it. That would just be idiotic. You know, like that's not responding to the market if you're doing that. So clearly they have to adjust their prices. But then because it's a national level, because it's one price change, you know, if you bought a Tesla Model Y, like Steve did a couple years ago, and now it's like $20,000 cheaper, you're like, man, I messed up. I shouldn't have bought then. And you have a lot of people. You have people suing sometimes, like if they're like right a week before a price change, and they're like, this is not fair. It's like, well, you bought a vehicle on the market for market price. Like, it's fair, dude. If you might feel like you got ripped off, but I mean that's how it works with this. So I think it's
Well,
just worth
I
reminding people Tesla acts as the dealer as well, so it is also adjusting prices, responding to the market like a normal dealer would, and we have to recognize that.
I want to point out though that that is very much a conscious choice of the manufacturer.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And
well,
I want to point out
but from the
that
beginning, there's 100%. If dealers
sure,
had tried to sell Teslas, I mean, if Tesla had tried to sell its cars through dealers, Tesla would not be alive. Nobody is, I think, would debate that.
um
Joe, Joe,
I don't
dealers
I
would
think
kill Tesla.
I agree with that, but I don't think it's because of the dealers. I think it's because the Tesla buyer is someone who wants to do things a different way. And I think even today, there's
But
people who are
Joe,
buying Teslas
dealers
only
were
to get
like,
away from.
dealers a decade ago did not want to touch an EV, or in general, you might find a rare one in the
Sure.
corner of the country, but it's like in general, dealers would not have sold people Teslas.
I think I agree with that. I think most
Now they
dealers
would.
still no. I think most dealers still don't want to touch EVs.
Really?
There's there's a lot of logistical issues that
But I mean,
come
if
with
the, but I mean,
EVs that
not
you don't
EVs, but
have
like
with
if
gas.
all of a sudden Tesla's like, okay, we'll go through dealers.
Oh no, you'd get 1,000 dealers apply within the first 6 hours.
Yeah, they would
Yeah,
love to
100%.
sell Teslas. That'd be,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, but I want to say that this thing with the constantly reducing the price, that can't be dismissed. And I'm going to point out a couple of things. We can talk about different manufacturers, but I want to specifically go in on Nissan because Nissan is a fellow EV leader. And I use the scare quotes on leader because I think whatever leadership Nissan had, they squandered. But look at the R35. The R35 is Nissan's high performance flagship car. It is a vehicle that, those of you who know my history will understand that I am intimately familiar with. I probably have 2 or 3 VR38 TT blocks sitting around in my garage. I know this car very much inside and out and have been a big part of it has been a big part of my life. I've been a big part of its life. And I think that's a fair statement. So when this car came out in 2008, and it's been largely unchanged since 2008, it cost about $65,000, $70,000. Now, if you bought one of these in 2008, you can probably still sell it for $65,000 or $70,000. And the reason that happened is because every year since the car came out, it has been the price has been raised. The price has increased steadily and substantially, while the updates and the changes have been very minimal. So, what does that mean? That means that if you bought a 2014, which was the first big real version 2 of this car, if you bought a 2014 for $95,000, 2015 that car would be 100 and 105, and you could still get 95 for yours, 20, et cetera, et cetera. So this has continued to now these cars are well over 120, $125,000. You can still get your money for them, and people are still buying them because they still deliver on the promise of like acceleration and straight line speed and cornering and everything else. In fact, if you were going to go drag race a Tesla or a Lucid Air Sapphire and you had to have an internal combustion car, this is probably one of like 2 or 3 that even has a chance, a prayer of keeping up with those cars. So Nissan took steps to keep this car special, keep the resale high, and ensure that there was a strong market for it. They did the opposite of Tesla. They did everything they could to prevent the R35 from becoming a commodity.
Yeah, and
Tesla's doing the opposite. They
yeah,
don't want their cars to be special. They
right.
want their cars to be ubiquitous. And when you buy a commodity as it is growing, as the supply of that commodity is increasing, while demand remains relatively stable, the price of the commodity can only go down.
Yeah, that's a
So
great thing calling it a commodity. I mean, because that's sort of that's
that's
what
what
it
it
looks
is.
like on the road to me these days. The Model 3, my Model 3 sure looks like a commodity. I mean, very very limited
Yeah.
number of these Nissans. Tesla's trying to reach 20 million vehicles a year, like nothing, no automaker has done. Trying to be as mass market as it gets, with just a few models, which is like,
Right.
talk about commodity. Yeah, and the funny thing too is, we did for a long time these total cost of ownership analyses, and one of the biggest assumptions you have to try to figure out is what's the resale value of the car going to be. And for a few years, like the resale value, I mean, Tesla led the market in resale value and depreciation. So it was like, yeah, very low cost of ownership because your resale value is really high, depreciation is really low. Now I haven't looked in a while, but I assume it's much different. I need to do one for my car, like a comparison, like a total cost of ownership at like 4 or 5 years, and actually look at. I did this a bit with the trade-in value Tesla offered me, which was quite low in my opinion. And people were like, "Oh, you shouldn't use that. You should look on the private market. You should sell on the private." So I need to get to finding out how much would be on the private market.
What year is your Model 3?
2019. It's over 4 years old.
There's a 2019 with 47,000 miles on it at Carvana, and Carvana typically prices their vehicles very high at 29,590.
Yeah,
and
so
I
it's
think
not.
that's high. I think it should be probably closer to like 24, 23,
Tesla offered
24.
me about 20,000 for it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's low. I think the real number is
Yeah.
about 22, 23
Yeah, it's known
for
Tesla offers you less than you would get at Carvana or somewhere, but
yeah.
but it's
But
not
you
going to
don't
be
have to deal with the
dramatically
dealer
different.
now.
And then
Oh,
you
look at the
don't have to
convenience.
pay certain taxes if you trade it in. It's
Right.
different. So there is a benefit. But also, like, okay, that's the situation right now. I bought a BMW i3 5 years ago for $16,000. I found very much like the same BMW on the market a few weeks ago for like $17,000. Like it's the same as it was 5 years ago. The same BMW i3, like the same year, type, mileage. So my thought is, okay, right now I'm taking a big depreciation hit if I tried to sell it, but in another 5 years, is it gonna be much different than it is now? Like, is it really? Am I gonna only be able to get like 10,000 for my Model 3? No, I think it's gonna hold up. I mean, but then the question, the issue is though, there are a lot of Tesla Model 3s on the road. They were never.
Well, not only that, but at 10 years old, what's the drop off point for an EV? It
Yeah.
used to be that when your internal combustion car, I'm talking going back into the 90s, it used to be that at 90,000 miles, you could still get money for your car. At 100,000 miles, it was pretty much over. Now, that has changed in recent years as affordability has kind of gone away. We've seen a number of internal combustion cars from Honda and Toyota and things like that very reliably do 150,000 miles. So that has gone away. But
Also,
even
automakers are
dealers,
not selling the cheaper models as much.
exactly
Which,
right. So you're kind of forced into accepting these higher mile deals. But that it remains to be seen, because an EV, I think a 10-year-old EV, a lot of people, a lot of normies, let's say people who are not in the EV space, who are not in the automotive space, which is the vast, overwhelming majority of people we talk to, they would probably be concerned about buying a 10-year-old EV because of the hype that is around battery replacement and the idea that at, well, 10 years old, stuff is going to start to break. I don't want to be stuck with this battery. It's not valid. It should not be a consideration. It should be no more a consideration than someone buying an internal combustion car saying, I don't know if I want to replace this transmission. And
yeah,
there are warranty companies out there that will continue to cover the car to 15 years. However, I would be shocked if at 10 years old, you could still get what you're getting today for that car, unless something horrific happens and we have like massive runaway inflation and, it's like $200 for a foot long at Subway.
yeah, yeah, they raise the prices all the time, but but yeah, we're
Yeah,
going
they
into
do.
territory unknown, and I think that goes for the broader economy,
Mm-hmm.
broader political environment, where we have like nut jobs controlling more and more of of the political landscape and discussions. And of course, with EVs, the transition to EVs, like we don't know what the used EV market looks like at 2028, 2030, when the Model 3 and Model Y are older vehicles. We just don't know.
Right.
We have no idea. And I mean, there's definitely going to be the case. There's always been the case that people are like EVs are simpler to maintain, they can last longer. They don't have engines, they don't have transmissions, they don't have a million hoses and belts. On the other hand, I think it's become a little more clear that there's still plenty of stuff that can break, and it's not like there's nothing in them that will need to be
Sure.
fixed. And there is the big looming issue of the battery. Although I think with I just think it's going to become clear that the batteries are holding up fine. And for most driving needs for a used car, you it's not going to be a worry, I think, but who knows.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is we don't, we don't know, and we're gonna find out as we
Do
go.
you think that the Prius or the Leaf are a good allegory for that? Because we can go back and look at what a 10-year-old Leaf is selling for.
I think the
And it's
Leaf is
not a lot.
difficult because it's always gotten bad press for the batteries, and the batteries have been horribly.
And people are buying them for less than
People still
2%
buy
off
them.
of MSRP.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be really interesting, but I definitely think now is not like 4 or 5 years after buying a new Tesla is not the best time to sell one if you're concerned about depreciation and resale value. I mean, I don't plan to ever sell mine, frankly, unless
Right.
I moved out of country. I think I would pass it on to my daughters, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's move on to another average story. This is a depressing one. Like, so a study has shown that average tailpipe pipe emissions, looking at the UK, but also the US market as well, are the same as they were 10 years ago. This is not counting for electric cars. Is not like, but the point is, because cars, we already talked about this last week, cars just keep getting bigger and bigger, heavier and heavier, and as a result, even though they've gotten more efficient, the engines have gotten more efficient, uh, emissions are the same because we just
Yeah.
buy bigger and bigger vehicles that
Well, I'm
weigh.
going to tell you something really depressing, but it's something that has to be understood
I
if
thought
we're
this
going to
was
have
really
real
depressing.
conversations. Yeah, this is less depressing.
Oh my.
If you look at where we are today in 2023, and you look ahead to the very first state that's going to implement an ICE ban, which is California in 2035, there are going to be more internal combustion vehicles on the road in 2035 than there are today.
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to have higher tailpipe emissions. We're going to have higher overall carbon emissions. And that is going to continue for years after the ban.
Yeah,
So if
you're right.
you have
That's
a
even more
realistic
depressing.
sense of climate change, of what we're actually doing to this planet, 2035 isn't soon enough. We need an ICE ban in 2025, and we need an ICE ban that takes these vehicles off the road. I'm not talking about take them out of dealerships where you can only buy an EV. I mean, someone walking around blasting out the radiators with a 10 gauge so that these vehicles can't be driven anymore. But we're not motivated by climate change. We're motivated by economy. We're motivated by other things that are make believe. And we're not going to have a planet to live on to spend all this money that we're making in the oil fields. But hey,
Well,
nobody asked.
this is what irritates me so much too, is so many political targets are just following the market. They're not leading. I mean, they're just like, oh, we're gonna only sell EVs by 2035. It's like, if you aren't only selling EVs by 2035, everything has gone wrong. Like, that's already
Everything
going
has
to
gone wrong.
naturally be the case from the market. So like, I mean, at least California is like ahead of others, but it's not really like driving. It's, I mean, it's obvious California is going to be at 100% EVs by 2035. Like, it's already at like what, 25% or something. It's like, it's crazy. So
Well,
I,
it's not, because you're going to get these like rural hill jacks up there in
okay, yeah,
Sebastopol.
and I mean, at that
Yeah,
point, most say, "Oh, we're talking 97%." Like, obviously, there's going to be
right.
leeway. There's going to be exceptions. I mean, we have the historical cars right now. Well, I don't know. I just find that annoyingly depressing and frustrating. I think Steve says in this article they should just be banning the sale of larger vehicles. You know, like, and I mean, they have, like, they call these the Chelsea tractors, and Chelsea's a rich area of London, and it's like, you know, just they just get bigger and bigger vehicles. I don't know if you should we talk about this tire extinguishers group that's putting lentils in deflating tires, putting lentils in them to I don't find this very helpful.
Yeah, it
I don't know.
sounds eco-terroristy.
Yeah, it's just like you're just gonna make them buy new tires, which has a negative effect,
Yeah, but a lot of
and make them
people.
hate you, hate
Well,
people,
yeah. So let's talk about this for a second.
which is not helping. I mean,
There
I don't.
is a lot of emotion surrounding the issue of electrification and climate change. And some of it, in my opinion, is very well placed. And I think it's going to be surprising to hear this, but I think there's a lot of people who have very understandable and very forgivable obsessions with their V8 pickup trucks and everything else, because culturally, societally, in the village that they were raised in, those are the kind of things that made you a man. That's what separated you from boyhood. That is what made you a responsible, respected member of your community. Now, your community probably sucks if that's the case. But the reality is that the individual who grew up in that community cannot be held accountable, or should not be held accountable, for the fact that it's difficult for them to separate that identity, that community identity, with how they see themselves. So it's going to take some time. It's going to be hard. But the community as a whole needs to understand that in order for it to continue to exist, in order for it to sustain, and I'm not talking about sustainability in the climate sense, I mean just sustainability in the ability to continue to operate, do business, and interact with the rest of the planet, and its ability to do business and its ability to continue to exist in its microcosm, it needs to be able to change and adapt to larger cultural trends and technology. And a lot of these small towns are proving that they are not going to be able to do that, in the same way that a lot of these small communities that are insulated because of their wealth, or insulated because of their faith, or insulated by choice, whether you're talking about, you know, the Amish and the Mennonites that choose to self-isolate, a lot of these isolated communities are really going to struggle in the next 5 or 10 years as this new technology transitions, in the same way that rural agrarian societies had a hard time adjusting to mechanical and steam power. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, and I think we have to just acknowledge the issue of, I don't know what the phrase would be, runaway capitalism, chronic capitalism, over capitalism, whereas like everything, so much in our
Any
culture,
capitalism.
so much in our culture is you have to get more and bigger and better, and that's how you feel successful. That's how you feel like you've arrived, you've succeeded in life. Otherwise, you have not succeeded in life. And Steve notes that he and his wife grew up in 850 square foot Cape Cod 2-bedroom houses. I don't know what size house he lives in now. If it's around the same, I mean, he owns now. He actually lives. Yeah. Well, anyway, we won't get into it, but he's astonished by the fact that 2 doors down, 2 lots down, someone has filed a plan for a 22,000 square foot home with 7 bedrooms, and just that's sort of like what he's putting out there as a representation of us constantly having to get something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
And this just issue with cars, with houses, with everything, where we might improve a lot on efficiency with cars, homes, everything, but we keep expanding the size of things so much that it doesn't have any real actual effect. I mean, it
To
has
me,
an
it's like
effect.
Cheesecake Factory. It doesn't matter how good the food is at Cheesecake Factory. They give you so much of it that it becomes disgusting and gross. And I haven't been to a Cheesecake Factory in 15 years. Maybe that has changed, but I remember just constantly being grossed out. Like somebody was like, let's go to Cheesecake Factory. I'm like, dude, I can't go there. It's disgusting. At some point, it doesn't even look like food anymore. It's just a trough of matter that your body can convert into hydrocarbons. And like,
I don't know.
I see that like this too. Like, do you like a 22,000 square? That's
Yeah.
3,000 square feet per bedroom. When the average size of a home in the United States is what, 1,800, 1,900 square feet? That's offensive. Somebody should
But if
burn
you
that
got
thing
the
down.
money, you got to do it.
Look,
Well,
I'm telling you, you eat one of these billionaires on TV, the rest of them are going to calm right down.
I haven't been to Cheesecake Factory. It looks very appealing, but I feel like that's what I sort of might expect from it. I like Subway. I am healthy.
See, I like Pizza Hut.
So Toyota, has it arrived? Has it not arrived? Is it entering the EV revolution? We have 6 Toyota EVs revealed recently.
We have 6 drawings of Toyota
Yes,
EVs.
yes. Drawings.
These are
So
drawings.
I'll just name them real quick. We'll go through them. The Land Cruiser SE concept, the EPU concept, a truck, which Toyota might be onto something with this option.
I'll agree with that.
The Land Hopper concept, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
The Jew concept, I'm not sure what that is, but
troublesome.
Space mobility prototype, of course, because we're all moving to space soon.
Yeah.
And the Neo Steer concept, because apparently being a laggard means you also have to do some weird copycat version of what Tesla has most recently done.
Okay.
I mean, it's different, but they're obviously like, oh, let's play with the steering wheel as well. We can do something better than the yoke. Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Not,
okay. Have you driven the RZ 450?
yeah, yesterday. No, no, I don't.
So
Joe, you believe me for a second.
I did. I was like, what? So about a year and a half ago, Lexus launched their RZ 450e. This is their electric kind of sporty thing. And it had a yoke steering wheel. And they did something that Tesla, at least in the first iteration, did not do, which is they had different steering maps for different speeds, so that when you were at low speeds, a half a turn equated to several locks of steering. When you were at higher speeds, it reduced the rate of input to the output on the steering wheel. And it shouldn't have worked. It should have been really weird, but they managed to do it in a very intuitive way. And it's been largely praised by just about everybody. We drove this car in Seattle last year, or rather, I drove this car in Seattle last year with our mutual friend, Peter McGillivray. Great car. It absolutely works. And I think in a way that I have, and again, I've never driven a Model S with a yoke, so I have to put that caveat out there, but in a way that people who have criticized the functionality of the yoke, I think would be very happy to drive Lexus's version of it. Lexus, obviously the parent company, is Toyota. So I think Toyota probably would have gotten this right. This, I think, will appeal to a lot of people who kind of learned to drive on PlayStation. Maybe this is the first new car they bought, but I will tell you this, when you drive this for a while, it's a little goofy and a little weird, but it does make the steering wheel feel like old technology, which it is.
All right, whatever. I don't know. Just give me a wheel. Give me a steering wheel.
I agree with give me a wheel,
I,
100%.
I've driven my Tesla Model 3 with a yoke because
Sorry to hear that.
yeah. So if you know Blake Fuller, he races. I know
Oh
you do.
yeah, we
I
know
know you do,
Blake.
but
We interviewed Blake at Austin last year. Blake's a good
yeah,
dude.
I know you know him well. But I mean, if people know Blake Fuller, know he races Teslas and has been racing cars for ages since he was a teenager. He's been racing at the Sebring track here in Florida, but he races Teslas and is a number of holds records and has performed excellently with them. And I don't know, when was it? A couple years ago when the yoke was just coming out. He got a Tesla Model S Plaid to race in a race up north, and he wanted to check if I mean he was not a fan of the yoke, but
Right.
he wanted to check if he could swap a normal Tesla steering wheel for the yoke. So I took my Model 3 over to his shop and we swapped out the wheels. So we put the yoke on my Model 3 for 15 minutes and put my Model 3 steering wheel on his Tesla Model S Plaid, and it worked. And I drove around with the yoke, and there was one thing I liked about it, just the visibility like slightly better. But it just wasn't. I don't.
Wasn't your thing.
I get the point. It's fun. It's cool. Look, but I'm just like, no. I mean, this is not. We're gonna stick with steering wheels for the mass market, and there's a reason for that. So whatever. I don't know. It doesn't
I
excite me.
no,
It
I don't
excites
think
me about as much as the space mobility prototype. In fact, I like the space mobility
I like the
prototype more.
space mobility more. I Toyota is leading a very clever propaganda campaign against everybody else.
Well, I would just say too, I believe that I'm not in doubt that they did a better job with it. Like
Oh,
I
sure.
believe your analysis and accept that that maybe I would even prefer it maybe over time, but I can't. I know I want the wheel.
But that's not what I'm going to say. I'm not talking about the wheel. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
their EVs in
I just wanted
general.
to accept. I didn't want to make it seem like I don't believe you because I do believe
Oh,
you.
I don't care.
Or I
Anyway,
believe Toyota, I should say.
my I know that Toyota is running an effective propaganda campaign when my father-in-law says, "Isn't Toyota coming out with a 700-mile EV?"
Oh my.
And I'm like, dude, they have been like Toyota has got everybody convinced that they have a solid state battery coming out right around the corner and that everybody should hold off buying an EV because Toyota has this figured out. And in another year, you'll be able to buy that, maybe another year or two. And they have done such a good job on this
Yeah.
that like they have undermined the entire EV market from just about everyone but Tesla because Tesla's fanboys don't believe that Toyota is going to have a
Oh yeah.
realistic EV. So
Toyota,
like in this
Toyota's deep
point,
in the doghouse for Tesla fans.
they are deep in the dog as they should be. But I just think it's shocking that Toyota has been able to convince the baby boomers and elder Gen Xers that they have a real solid state, fast charge, ultra high mileage EV right around the corner.
Well,
There's no reason to believe that.
no, I think what's both clever and frustrating and stupid about this is like the fifth iteration of this from Toyota. So it's like
Yes.
anyone who's followed EVs for a while, it's like, oh yeah, another hype cycle about some solid state batteries from Toyota. And I mean, we just start to ignore it. We're just like, okay, yeah, uh-huh. But then so many more people have become aware of the EV market and have started thinking about
That's right.
EVs. And
Well,
we're not thinking about them and how many of them are like, this is their first solid state battery hype cycle for them. And they're like, oh, look, it's just a couple years away. And like you said, Toyota did a very effective job with its.
yeah. But this is something that you and I have talked about in another context here regarding Clean Technica that and I've accused you of this. I've accused you of being a little bit jaded when I say to you, like, people don't know about this. You say, well, we've been writing about this for 5 years. How do they not know about it? A lot of people that find these articles, this is the first time they're reading anything about it. We can't assume that they have ever read anything about a Toyota EV before. We have to treat every single reader like a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young springling who has just now hip-hopped in front of the sniper's rifle, and they're just like innocently chewing on the grass and have no idea that they are now embroiled in this massive Toyota marketing campaign that has no basis in
really
reality.
strange metaphors. I got lost there. This is
You know
chewing
what?
on the grass,
This
and
is literature, and you're just lucky to be a part of it and bear
no,
witness to
I
it.
think I think the challenge for us is we have a lot of longtime readers, of course, for past decade plus or years at least, and
Yeah,
you can't like be too basic with, or they're like, oh, this is getting boring. We know this, and then at the same time, you have to always be aware of all the potential new readers. But yeah, let's get to what.
Well, let's make it
Might be
fast. Let's
appealing
make
here.
this real fast because we're running to the end of our time commitment. Do you think any of these vehicles will come to market in a form that is recognizable as these concepts?
I mean, I don't know. This truck looks pretty normal and basic, and the SUV here, the Land Cruiser, looks similar to what it might look like on the road.
Maybe.
And I mean, I think Toyota still has enough cachet as a EV leader, as a hybrid leader to a lot of people, that they would find a lot of buyers if they brought these to market soonish. With
That's the thing. People think of Toyota
people like,
as an
oh, look,
EV
it's
hybrid
time to
leader.
go electric because Toyota's here with an electric SUV and pickup truck. And
That's right.
I mean, maybe that will be helpful to get another big portion of the market. But yeah, I don't know. It's not really like you said, these are drawings, and until they're not drawings, it's hard to really believe in Toyota. And you just had to be the whatever the
the BZ 4x. We got to
BZ
talk
4
about
by,
that
and
thing.
you were not happy with it.
I
So
had the Prius and the BZ 4x. I had them back to back. And we should actually do a show just about the cars that I've reviewed this last quarter, because I've had a lot of interesting cars. The BZ4X, BZ4x, I had it in like almost like a guard's red. I got to see exactly what red it was, but I thought it was hideous. I thought it was like, I was like, I can't believe Toyota thought this was a good idea. And I just drove it around, and I was at a stoplight, and there was this group of, and it was in Cicero. It was a group of young Mexican kids driving by. Cicero's kind of like a Chicago suburb, but it's heavily Latin American. And these kids walked past me, and they were looking at it, and I could hear their conversation because I didn't have any radio or anything. And this girl was like, "Oh, I like that. What is that?" The kid was like, "Oh, that's new Tesla or something." He's like, "No, it's a Toyota." And they were like arguing about it, and all of them were like, "Wow, that's a hot car." So like, I think I have lost
we're
the
getting
plot a little
old,
bit.
Joe.
That's it. That's it. And I've reached, and I have to now recalibrate my experience and say, look, previously Toyotas and Lexuses were being built for my parents. They were being built for the boomers, right? And I didn't get it because I wasn't a boomer, and they never appealed to me. I thought they were boring. And now I think they've gone the other way, where they're like trying way too hard. They've got a whole bunch of weird mood lighting. They've got a bunch of buttons that don't mean anything. This is nonsense. Who would ever want this? And now they're marketing for like the millennials and zennials.
They just
And I'm too old for that. And I got skipped by Toyota, and that's fine. But I have to now recalibrate my understanding so that I can review these cars fairly, because they don't appeal to me at all. Maybe that's okay. They're not for me.
Probably because you went to Pizza Hut too much, and
that's it.
Yeah, well, I like this. Is interesting. I mean, Ramirez is very excited about this for African markets and other markets, and we'll see. I mean, it just depends on what Toyota is actually going to do. If they're going to try to produce a lot and sell them everywhere, that's one thing. But this is got a bit of a California appeal, I think. So this is I think this could be a popular electric.
What's that supposed to be on the roof of the car?
Some kind of thing you put.
That's not what surfboards look like.
No, it's there's two.
But there's no keel or anything. Like, what the heck is that? Is that a ski? Like, whoever did this Photoshop doesn't know what surfboards or paddleboards look like.
I don't know. But then you've got the
so terrible
creative wheel again. Well, okay, that's it.
Next,
we have a couple more. So we have this. This is just the difference. Ramirez, I had a great story on the difference between BYD's approach, simplicity, versus Tesla's audacity. different approaches to becoming, to being the EV leaders of the world for the past decade. BYD has edged into the latter more. Like, it's got some really flashy cars now. I remember when I first started seeing them, I was like, oh wow, BYD is no longer just like a basic cheap EV company. They're doing I remember our tech guy Kanan Boss was like really impressed with their technology inside the the infotainment tech and stuff. And I was like, oh wow. So he put them up there with Neo and Xpeng. And I mean, I think BYD is just doing everything now. So, but it's always been the bread and butter for it has been these cheaper, low cost electric vehicles and producing them at a high volume. And Tesla, you can say, is going from audacity to simplicity more, especially if they build the Model C, and then BYD and Tesla maybe end up more similar than anyone would ever think they would be. As you've
What's a
argued,
Model C?
well, the cheap one. People call it the Model
Oh,
2.
Model 2. I've heard Model 2, yeah.
I was the one who called it the Model 2 as a joke, because the Model 3 was supposed to be the Model E, right?
Right.
And it had to be the 3 because Ford had the patent for Model E. So I thought it's funny to call the next cheaper Tesla a Model 2, because it didn't really make sense with the history of Tesla. So I always thought it was funny. Some people got irritated by it. Some big Tesla fans were like, stop calling it the Model 2. It's not going to be the Model 2. And then at one point, Elon finally said, no, it's not going to be the Model 2. And I was like, of course it's not going to be the Model 2. It's a freaking joke. But everybody has latched on to Model 2 because it just makes sense in
If you
the
say to me
numeric
Model, yeah,
BMW 3, all these cars are like number, and it's like, so it just makes sense. But then, so now I've switched to calling it Model C because I think that's more likely, the compact Tesla, cheaper Tesla. And people are like, why are you calling it Model C? It's like, because people got upset with the Model 2 name that I came up with that, now everybody uses, but
they
I
should
don't
call
know.
it the Model F because it's a fantasy that will never happen.
I still think C is most likely. It could be a cybercar, Tesla cybercar, could be compact.
Think about how far
anyway,
we've come. No, this is a great point. Think about how far we've come. When the Cybertruck was first shown, the assumption was that the flat panels and flat glass and everything else would make it so much more affordable and easy to manufacture, and we'd be able to churn out bajillions of them. And that just did not go that way. So now, if you're thinking about doing a cyber car, that's probably going to be more expensive than the Model S. That's not going to be the cheap one.
Yeah, but
that's going to be the crazy
fake
pricey
cyber.
one.
Could be
Fake cyber. Yeah, it's all fiberglass. They just paint it. It's wrapped to look like a stainless.
But what you've said repeatedly is, if Tesla starts selling cheaper and cheaper cars, it's going to lose that prestige that that makes it so popular. I'm not really sure. I've never really fully bought that, but I see the argument and I definitely see it as a possibility. I just think that Tesla, especially like if you think of kids, like it's got such a strong brand with younger generations. I just don't think that goes away even if it starts selling cheaper options. And there's going to be a big difference between the Model C and the Model SX, whatever. So I don't know. But at the same time, I see the argument. I believe it's possible. And in reality, they become more and more similar if Tesla's selling more and more cheaper EVs and BYD's got a full range. So, but it's just interesting, the two very different approaches and how they still have for 10 years led the market together. The last thing, I don't know how much we're sort of out of time, but there's a U.S. Justice news today that U.S. Justice Department has issued subpoenas to Tesla for ongoing autopilot and full self-driving probes. But I would just say, this has been going on for years, and it's always hard to know what's a real like investigation. Is there something like substantial and influential driving it or going to come out of it, or is it just a case of they're always going to be investigating it because people complain about it and don't like what it's called, and there are incidents. Like, I mean, there's two very different possibilities with these. One is that it's really something and it's going to have an effect, and one is just as forever investigations that are like, just going to always be there but not really matter.
Well, this has some nuance to it, right? So they didn't really list the last item, but this is something that Wall Street Journal is reporting, that part of this investigation includes whether or not Elon improperly used Tesla shareholders' resources to build the house for himself, and also whether or not he's been using Tesla resources at his other companies that he's the CEO of, whether that is SpaceX or whether that is Twitter, X, whatever else. And
But
then one that is listed is the fact that Tesla has more than $3 billion in deferred revenue on its books. And a lot of that money depends on delivering fully functional FSD capability. And that is something that, at least according to this Wall Street Journal analysis of what's going on, is included in these new subpoenas. So I think
I think these
that'll
things
be
are just being lumped together into news stories. Like
yes,
the investigation is just about autopilot. Maybe that also includes the deferred revenue for full self-driving features.
yeah,
That's very possible. But the other stuff about, like, you know, Elon potentially building a glass house in Texas with Tesla funds, like that's a whole separate thing. I don't think that's related to this at all. But I think what it tells us, and then what I brought up when we were chatting about this, you know, the use of top Tesla executives and employees to help with Twitter after Elon bought Twitter. It's just kind of like a brazen, kind of like I can do whatever I want
right.
attitude that's like that sort of permeates Elon and his companies. Like he's got that attitude like I'll do whatever I want and we'll pay a fee later if I have to, or get a slap on the wrist. Like it's happened with many different things now. And
Mm-hmm.
I think as it happens with more things, he's more like, well, I'll just do whatever I want. What do I ever like? Worst I have to do is like pay like a $5 million fee or something. Like who cares, you know? And for him, it's nothing. And I think I think that kind of somewhat, you know, recklessness and just I'm a like I can break any rules I want thing is becoming a more of a problem. Like I think as a startup, you need it to survive and succeed sometimes. As a large established company, I think it just starts to create more and more problems and a web of problems that I don't think is good for Tesla. And I think you know, a lot of people argue they need a little bit more of a of an adult, let's say, managing as COO of Tesla, sort of like Gwynne Shotwell at SpaceX has done for a long time. And Elon can always be the creative guy, the inventor, the innovator, whatever, the guy pushing cutting edge stuff that may or may not work. But it's just like they need to follow the rules a little bit more and be a little more careful. And I don't know if they misappropriated funds to build Elon a glass house in the woods in Austin, near Austin, but the fact that we can't say whether that's true or not is just indicative of the problem. And sort of if it is true, it's like that's just like really, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it comes back down to something that you said to me, and it just stuck with me back in 2021 when we were doing the EV FAQ articles as like an SEO thing. And the snippet cut off at Elon SH dash. And then I think the headline was, you know, the cars that Elon should build or something like that. But it just said something like Elon SH, and that was the cutoff. And I said, oh, I need to redo this title because, you know, we've got to change it. It looks weird. And you said, no, keep that title because it looks great in Google search. What does it say? Elon shit his pants? It could be anything. It's
I
Elon.
remember now.
And I
Wait a
thought
minute.
that was so funny. Like it could be anything. It's
Yeah.
Elon. And this is
Well,
where some of the problem is like, did Elon, put a bunch of Tesla engineers into a car and ship them over to Austin to build his house? Maybe. You know, is he funneling a whole bunch of R&D money for Cybertruck's stainless steel shell into that he's then going to turn around and license to SpaceX for their stainless steel rocket? Dude, maybe. Like we have no idea. He
and
is
that's
just kind of writing his own rule book, and that's going to be a problem.
and that's why he's always in news, and he's so popular as a topic of news because people who love him want to read about it. People who hate him want to, or can't help themselves but read like what's he done now. And
Yeah.
there's always this fascination like what's you know we always want our mind to be a little bit blown and open up, and we want to be like, you know, oh wow, I didn't think about that as a possibility, you know. And it's like for better or worse, whether we're drawn to like positive or negative stories, we're drawn to that. And I mean,
Yeah.
Elon's full of that. Like,
Do you think that he believes? So I've always kind of said this to my sales guys. Whenever I was a sales manager and I was kind of trying to train them, I would always tell them, look, whatever you do, don't believe your own BS.
oh, I think he 100% believes
He
in it.
100% believes it, you think?
Yeah. This is why I don't, people who claim he's a liar, like that always rubs me the wrong way, because I'm like, no, he's just like, he's that, that's who he is. He's that interested in futuristic stuff. He's that optimistic
Yeah.
that he
Like he
believes.
really thinks he's going to be on Mars in 10 years.
Well, he's actually, he doesn't want to go. He This is one of the funnier things to me too. Like people asked him years ago, like, so are you going to go to Mars? Like, no, I think I'll probably be too old at that point. I'll, other people. And I've always been like, that's really weird. Like his fascination with going to Mars, like that should be. Oh, but I think maybe there was a point when I thought maybe he would end, like when he got really old, he would go, but he would be more useful on Earth. I just find that one, that's one of the weird things that's never really connected for me with, because I think who he presents himself as and who he seems to be, he should want to be pioneering the civilization on Mars. I think he just knows how crappy it's going to be, and how he just knows, okay, this is fascinating, it's going to be really useful, important, but there's a high chance I would die, and I'd rather not. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be boring. I can't handle. He couldn't handle sitting at home during COVID. I mean, he can't handle that. So I think it's just one of the weird disconnects.
Yeah, it comes down to me. Ultimately, I always come back to Tesla is never going to make a motorcycle because Elon had a bad motorcycle crash as a kid, and now he's scared of motorcycles.
Yeah, no,
you're scared of motorcycles.
He cried about it, or almost cried about it at a shareholder meeting.
No, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. I saw
asking for Tesla to make one.
So like, yeah, that was embarrassing. So if you think a guy who's afraid of a motorcycle is going to strap himself to a rocket and fly to Mars, you are seriously.
Well, at the same time, like when they sold PayPal, he bought a McLaren and he crashed it on the first day, and he didn't have insurance on it. And then he used to fly jets like very frequently and like fly them through around mountains and stuff. And then one day he was like, gosh, I could really die the way I'm flying these around. I should just stop. Yeah. So he's got a side of him that's like, he probably has this debate on and off. Like, am I going to Mars or am I not? To go or to stay?
100%. And I think he very sincerely struggles with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting show today. We went all over the place. Thank you for.
That's what makes these shows great. We talk about
we're everything. Different. We are different.
Peace.
Oh my.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.